Basic fundamental question.
Yep.
What is conservatism?
Roger Scruton
Love
said,
him.
in his just beautifully Roger Scrutiny way, I don't have the accent, so I can't really do it. He said, well, you know, you would imagine that a conservative wants to conserve things. And that's a large part of my answer. The answer that you're supposed to give in the American conservative movement context is, you know, you push your glasses up on your nose and you say, well, actually, to be a conservative is to, you want to reduce the size and scope of the government, you want to cut taxes, and you want to let people do whatever they want to do. And that's what, that's just silly. I mean, that's libertarianism, which did come to dominate the conservative movement for much of the last half of the 20th century. And the results have been a disaster. So I don't think that's what conservatism is. I think we want to conserve things. We want to conserve the good and the true and the beautiful. We do want to conserve our traditions. We want to conserve our way of life. We want to conserve our families and our communities.
Mm-hmm.
We want to conserve our very identity. You know, I think half of my family is of the swarthy Sicilian persuasion. And so food is very important to our culture. Right? Food is a big part of the Italian-American identity. When Klaus Schwab comes in and says, you are going to eat the bugs, you are not going to eat the cannoli anymore, you will eat the bugs, that is an attack not just on gastronomy or on it's an attack on identity. And there are so many other facets of our identity, our sexual identity, our national identity, and then ultimately, of course, our religious identity. I mean, that's we will ground our identity either in I am who I am, or we will be left with the pathetic question, which is who am I, like a teenager trying on different personalities.
Yeah.
That's an observation from my friend, Father George Rutler. And so that's where your identity ultimately has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing a concerted attack on that in particular. I mean, we're speaking now hours after the passage of this preposterous bill to redefine marriage. And we knew it was going to pass because 12 Republican senators squished on it. And they allowed it to get past the filibuster, which meant that the Democrats needed a bare majority, not 60 votes. So at the very last moment, Mike Lee, Marco Rubio, I think Lankford, there were a few senators who tried to throw some amendments in the bill to not have this thing completely destroy Christian business owners and Jews and Muslims and ordinary sensible atheists who recognize what marriage is. And the amendments were all shot down. And so the amendments were shot down by the Democrats, they were shot down by the liberals, They were shot down by the Republicans, though. You know, we're just always one or two votes short, aren't we? There's always that Mitt Romney out there. There's always that squish who is going to come out and prevent you from having any kind of victory. And I think with Republican senators like that, who needs Democrats? If that's what conservatives are doing, then truly they're not conserving a damn thing, because marriage is the fundamental political institution.
Yeah.
If you can't conserve that, you simply are not a conservative.
So as it feels like the left has been dragging us in their direction, such that people like Joe Rogan are thought of to be conservative, or even Dave Rubin. So, you know, you talked about conserving what's true, good, and beautiful, which is quite general. You talked about marriage, which is specific.
Yeah.
But I suppose what's something that Catholic Christians should want to conserve that would upset people who are thought to be conservative, like Joe Rogan or Dave Rubin?
Well, to use those examples, and Dave in particular, probably marriage would be a good example of this. Though, I tell you, I know Dave and Joe Rogan, and even other people who are center-left who now are viewed as on the right, people like Elon Musk and others, they catch a lot of flack because they hold plenty of liberal views, and some of their political vision is a little inconsistent or incoherent. But I'll take it. You know, I'm friends with Dave Rubin. I don't know Joe personally. I don't know Elon Musk. But Dave has good inclinations, meaning he was a big lib. He recognized something was seriously wrong. Dave has become much more conservative every year that I've known him, and I've only known him 6-7 years now. And so, yes, obviously there are still plenty of, I think, inconsistencies with his view. It'd be hard to call Dave a conservative, really. But when you look at this insane culture that we're living in, where we are being inundated constantly with confusion, inanity, false history, absolutely incoherent epistemology, ontology, and on top of that, all this insane sex stuff, I can't really blame people for falling into it,
Yeah.
and I wonder what's the way out that we're going to give people. Obviously, there's the marriage problem, but take it even to its logical extreme, the transgender issue. What do you say to some poor girl who, at age 16, was told, chop your breasts off, pump yourself full of poison, destroy your voice, have your hair all fall out, just mutilate your body, become sterile, and then she figures out 6 years later, I've made a horrible mistake.
Bless her.
What do we do for those people? What do we do, even on the marriage question? What do we do for a couple of guys who have indulged same-sex attraction and who have taken on a gay identity and who have even gotten gay married, and then a couple of years later they wake up and say, wait a second, this isn't what marriage is.
Yeah.
What do we do? What is the off-ramp?
I love that. It's a great question because we're all victims of the sexual revolution.
Yeah.
Even if it's just we've been inundated by porn since the time we were kids, and that's affected us, it's affected our relationships. And so I love that. What's the off-ramp? It reminds me of a line from Peter Kraft, who said, when a maniac is at the door, feuding brothers reconcile. And so I understand there is this desire to get really clear about what it is we believe and what it is we'd like to see happen in American society, what we might like to see outlawed, etc. But I think it is important that we find comrades wherever we can find them, allies.
Yeah, of course, because the maniac at the door is a really apt analogy, especially because maniacs and lunatics are incoherent, right? There is a huge gap between what they view reality to be and reality itself. And this is a problem for our culture because we're all kind of maniacs. This was the real point of my speech last night at Franciscan, which is we've had a total breakdown in representations. And Owen Barfield, this philosopher who is an Inkling, who I played a large role in converting C.S. Lewis, and who's underappreciated. But he predicted all of this in 1965. He said, as the scientific revolution moves forward, what you're going to see is a diminishing of original participation in reality. You're going to see an increase in the gap between the symbol and the symbolized. And you're going to see a kind of idolatry of phenomena, idolatry of matter, because science only looks at the physical world. And so obviously we see this in the way that we talk about sex, right? Sex is we no longer talk about making love. We no longer talk about sex really in the context of marriage. Sex is just what some piece of flesh does to another piece of flesh to titillate oneself.
Yep.
And or even, you mentioned porn, we abstract that even further. Sex is the thing that we see on the pixels on the screen. And then we do something with ourselves, in a dark corner of our apartment. That creates an idol. And what Barfield predicted was this would break down collective representations such that there is no unity of pictures anymore. We actually don't know what a woman is. People actually don't know what marriage is. And so people will each be speaking their own language of babble. And that's what's gone on. So obviously it's sort of like, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how'd you like the play? We all know that the conservative movement is in really bad shape. It's in so much worse shape than anybody thinks it is, because we can't even agree on what the fundamental components of reality mean anymore.
Yeah. It seems like there's less infighting among the left and the agenda they're trying to push than there is among conservatives. Is that because it's a lot easier to tear something down than to rebuild something? Or?
Of course, yeah. That's a big part of it. But it's also because the left has replaced our representations, our images, our understanding of what reality means. Because it has replaced those things so effectively, they're all kind of on the same page. We are the ones who are not, because more than half of the conservatives now, the majority of Republicans believe that marriage is any union of two people who like each other. Mm-hmm. Right? This is radical. This is radically to the left of Barack Obama in 2011.
Yeah.
So when you're in that place, the libs have not only deluded themselves, they've deluded half of us as well.
Thanks so much for watching. Please like if you liked, and if you loved, subscribe.